Hi everyone, it's Jackie Schomburg-Abstract. This is part 3, the last part, of a 3-part series I did of it ended up being a 6-panel, 12 by 12 series I did for my husband for his birthday. So this was inspired by our garden, and it's one example of how this grid journal page really inspired me to work with green, and it instantly was garden to me. So I moved on and made it larger so that it is this size. This is the one that I actually did not use. So this is the 7th one, and I gave my husband the other 6. So 2 of them won't change a whole lot in this video, and the others will change fairly significantly. All right, let me know which one you ended up liking the best. I would love to hear from you, and thank you for following along. If you have not yet watched parts 1 and 2, I'd recommend stopping now and watching 1 and 2. I will link to them here, probably up here, maybe up here, and we'll put the links also in the description. All right, thanks for watching. And away we go. I'm less sick than I was for the other voiceovers, so hopefully my voice sounds more like normal, although I can already hear the nasally sound. So apologies for that. I am so proud of these, well, really all 7 panels, I suppose. I'm realizing that this is the first time I've ever had a specific body of work that was inspired intentionally by something, i.e. my garden in this case, and then done an abstracted, this is my interpretation of the garden and what I love about our garden. So clearly it's not literal, clearly it's not realistic, clearly it's not any of these things, but I felt so inspired by it, and I trusted myself to let it be what it was. There were a couple times I thought about making some sort of flower shape, and I quickly poo-pooed that because whenever I make something that's representative, I don't like it when I do it in my own work. So I don't know. I wanted to keep things abstracted. Some of the things like the maroon and pink stripes in the upper row, second one from the left, that to me feels floral. I know it's stripes. I know it doesn't make any logical sense, but to me that feels floral. So it could be rows of tiny flowers. It could be one flower with different shades of pink. None of this is a literal interpretation, but I was going for the pops of color. In our yard, we have tons of, thanks to my husband, we have tons of greenery. We've got some evergreen bushes. We have lots of hydrangeas, which have tons of green with their flowers. We have lots of daffodils and irises from my mom's garden, actually. We transplanted those before she moved. And there's just a ton of green. So for me, the majority of the inspiration is really coming through in the greens. There's different shades of green, right? We have a big lawn in the front, a big yard, and we have the 2 lots on either side of us have a wooded front yard, basically. So a portion of their front yard is all natural, little mini forest patch from part of their yard to the street. And we have a clear shot to the street. We can see that. There's no wooded area. But we get the benefit of having the lush trees on either side to look at. So, all that to say, I loved using all these different shades of green. I loved mixing them together with each other. I loved finding new hues that I haven't used before. I loved glazing so that I had transparent areas of some of these transparent colors going over other sections. So it really was created a lot of depth. It created a lot of kind of like a glow. I feel like when you glaze a lot and you put in a layer of gloss medium, and then you go back and glaze again, and you put a layer of gloss medium, if you change the color slightly with each glaze, it really builds up nicely and gives you kind of this glow from, let's say, from underneath. I guess it's from underneath. You can just, it's just, there's like a certain oomph that's there that's not there otherwise. So there's just some space in the layers, and it feels, ethereal is probably not the right word, but it feels like rich and alive. You know how the air feels different on a rainy day when you look out, like at a night sky or a night, look out at the road at night. It looks different on a rainy night than it does on a clear, dry night. When it's raining, the colors are lush and darker and really saturated. And then on the sunny, or at least dry days, things are a little bit dusty and just not super lush. I don't know. Long way to say that. I liked the different transparent layers. Thus why I kept glazing in little bits here and there. And all glazing is putting on a thin layer of paint and wiping almost all of it off. And then putting on another thin layer and then wiping some off. Just like I'm doing right there. So it looks like in some cases I'm wiping all the color off. But most of the time there's color left over. It's just that it's a very thin layer. So you go back over it again and again and again and again, and you build up the layers slowly. And that is what glazing is. Just thin layers over time. See, I'm adding another layer here. Apparently I skipped a section there, filled that in a bunch. And I didn't like, apparently, how light those, little U-shaped scoops were. So colored over the whole thing with a darker green. And now I'm carving spaces out of there. I forget what I've done by the time I do these voiceovers, and I myself was surprised by that. When I painted over the whole thing, I did not remember that, but now I do. Now, the upper right corner, the one that's directly above my palette there, that one doesn't change much at all. That one is basically done. So the others change a decent amount, especially that upper left. The upper left, I was not loving at this state. And this one that I'm working on now, the second from the right on the top, I really, really liked, and then everything I did to it, I liked it less and less and less. So I make some big changes a bit later with that one. And the one that's on the bottom row all the way to the right, closest to my palette, that one I thought was interesting. Wasn't really loving the giant green shape at the bottom, but it became my favorite painting by the end. So don't give up on me. Don't give up on it. It's funny how sometimes you just find the exact right little bits of color to add and it changes everything. Now, I did have to remind myself many times. I spent about 9 or 10 hours on these panels. Thus why I have enough footage to make a 3-part little series with these videos. The last 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, I very much felt the pressure of, okay, these are going a good direction. You like where these are going. Your husband's birthday is very soon. People are coming into town. People actually probably were in town already when I was working on this part for this whole video. So his parents came to town. His 2 best friends from college came to town. It was a really nice weekend that we all got to hang out. And I kept darting into my art room with every spare half hour I had to try to finish these up. And I felt kind of rude because we did have people staying with us and visiting us. And I would just disappear sometimes when everyone else was doing something else. So, and I did have a whole night to myself when my husband and his friends were out at a Bucks game in Milwaukee, and my kids were asleep, and then I just spent that whole chunk of night painting. And it was really fun to have these just to go back to. It's been such a long time that I've worked on a series of panels. I've gotten so much into the grid journaling that it's such a nice, sweet, short fix that I get to make teeny little art series in 1 or 2 sittings. But this reminded me, this process of doing these 7 panels reminded me how much fun it is to make bigger art as well. And these are not huge, they're 12 by 12. But so much fun. And now where I put that striped section there on the bottom left, the pink and maroon, when I put it on that green stalk, again, that feels very floral to me. I don't have the pink and maroon stripes in every single panel. I did have it in more than one because I wanted it to tie to something else in the series. I didn't want it just to be out and not related to anything else because it's so distinct and so obvious. Most things I wasn't too matchy on if I put red in where the red was coming from. Is it tissue paper? Is it butcher paper? Is it just regular magazine collage? But if something was very obvious, like those pink and maroon lines, I wanted to make sure they were somewhat grounded in the series. So for me, that meant just having it appear more than once. So it appears in those 2 places in a big swatch, and then right where I'm working right now on that second from the left on the bottom row, on the far left edge, that's a little bit of a maroon stripe and a pink stripe there as well. Much less obvious portion of that paper for sure. I don't know if it seems weird that I'm so proud of being able to have a series that I wasn't so inspired by my husband's garden. It's not how I typically work. And quite frankly, when I started it, I wasn't sure I could pull it off. So the fact that I feel like I did pull it off, I am very proud of that because it was a stretch. And that's one of the reasons that this feels like such a special collection to give my husband. One, obviously, because it's inspired by the gardens that he has tended to and shaped in our yard. And 2, because it was really a different way for me to work that turned out successful in this instance. I continue to move the panels around just to keep the ones I'm working on front and center. And I've carefully chosen to put the ones I'm not working on actively at the moment up on that top row on the right side. The one that I just brought forward now, this is one of those panels that it's good that you're working on more than one panel because this one felt like such a sinking ship and everything I added to it seemed to not give me any more help with a clear direction. So what I wish I had done is when it started going in a direction that I didn't enjoy, I wish I had made a bigger, bolder choice and just painted over a huge chunk of it and then started from there. Instead, I was trying to do things a little piecemeal and try to save more of the background, thus using this leaf, masked leaf tissue paper that I used. And it just makes it look a little bit busier, which was not my goal. This I loved. So on the bottom right side, I'm using a very small color shaper to pull through that celadon to show the other green behind it and make those stripes. I'm using a wet wipe just to get a bit more of the paint off in between the stripes. It was so much fun to do. Very pleasing. If you're looking for a very pleasing activity, highly recommend. Paint a thin layer of paint and then pull it back with those color shapers. I decided to add some turquoise paint because I added some of the turquoise crayon earlier. And again, it just grounds, it makes that color more of a, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, just like a building block of this series, right? Many of them have lots and lots of green, and then most of them have a little turquoise somewhere. Not all, but most. This is me adding a little bit of periwinkle near that red. Cleaning up the edges. Still trying to save that one on the top. So because the majority of the foundation was set on these, the bottom middle one is still a mess, but the other ones are starting to take some shape. I wanted to focus on the small details now. So like, what little pops of color do I want? Where do I want them? What makes sense from a visual perspective? Are there other colors I want to bring in? If so, where and how much? I knew that I wanted the green to stay the majority of the panel, so I didn't want to take anything away from that. I spent some time adding different colors of green, different colors mixing. I alternated between adding turquoise to green gold or turquoise to celadon and green gold. I used Payne's gray and green gold. Green gold was basically my yellow. And it helped make the darker blues much more green. And it kept the transparency so that I could see through the layers in most of these situations. The celadon is very opaque, which led to more opaque layers. Each panel kind of has its own thing that's its shining difference. The upper left-hand side has that big white patch that makes that different. The red in the middle, it's almost like a bullseye in the middle. There's a big part of me that wishes that was over a few inches. However, that's where it is. So I went with it. I didn't think it was worth trying to redo it and move those because they just kind of fell there organically. So even though typically, from a compositional perspective, you wouldn't necessarily want to have your focal point right in the middle of the panel. I decided this is one of those cases where you have to know the rules to break the rules. So this is me knowing that I don't want that, but still doing it. And that's the cool thing about being the artist. You get to decide that. Someone else can come up and tell me like, oh, that's right in the middle of the panel. Why'd you do that? And I can say, I don't know. That's where it wanted to be. It took me a while when I was, still working on my corporate job and still, painting as a hobby on the side is what I called it, before I realized that I get to make the decisions, which sounds obvious to me now. But before, I was also much younger. So I was 10, 15 years younger. And I would ask people their thoughts on if something was finished or not. Is this panel finished? Is this painting finished? Do you think so? I'm not sure. Do you think it is? And now, as I'm, 10, 15 years older and wiser and more experienced at painting and finding my style, the only one that can decide if something's done is me. And the same goes for you and your art. The only one who gets to decide if it's done is you. So that's the wonderful thing and sometimes the intimidating thing, because of course we all want people to like our art, and we all want to like our art too. Sometimes it's a little intimidating being the one to call the shots, but it's really a good thing. It does take some getting used to, though, if you're not one to boldly stand up for yourself and say this is good enough as it is. And it's a hard thing to learn to do as an artist. So I'm not making light of what it is. It took me so long to call myself an artist. Yeah. So I'm not at all saying it's a minor blip. It's more of a mindset change, I think, going from calling yourself an artist instead of someone who paints as a hobby or draws or collages as a hobby, to call yourself an artist is really stating your intention to the whole world around you, right? You don't have to make different art to call yourself an artist. Don't have to be an experienced artist with shows at the Met to call yourself an artist. All you have to do is decide you're an artist. That's it. There's no prerequisite. Don't have to go to art school. Don't have to do anything special from a qualification standpoint. And so it's really a mindset shift. And once I had that mindset shift, I got a lot more traction in what I was working on. Now I'm using some masking tape here. I put a little bit of gloss medium at the edge of the tape to give myself a clean line. Otherwise it'll bleed through sometimes. But there's so many soft edges in these panels that I wanted there to be a couple crisp lines. And that was one that I chose. So me trying to figure out how bold I want my green gold. And I decided I wanted to have another straight line, this little horizon line here, underneath my white thing that looks to me like a little snake plant in a pot. That's probably because I have some snake plants in pots over here. But look at that crisp line. It's so satisfying. And because I had painted over a lot of the Celadon with green gold and tinted it and glazed it, I'm bringing the Celadon back in lots of areas, or brought the Celadon back in because I was missing that neutral, I don't know, for some reason Celadon's very comforting to me. I don't know if that's just because it's quiet space. I don't find gray necessarily comforting, but I really find Celadon comforting. And it's basically a gray green. Um, it just makes me so happy. It's very light. And honestly, if I went to a forest preserve, I don't know if I'd see a lot of Celadon anywhere. Maybe. Maybe some like mosses and things that are growing on the sides of oak trees. I don't know. But for me, it somehow ties things together for me. It allows the shiny boldness of the green gold to really kind of be rocketed out into the front. Gives it a big push forward. The Celadon's just hanging back, supporting its friends, not trying to take the spotlight, but setting all the other aspects up for success. This process, I allowed myself to be very free with my brush and with the collage and with all the things. I wasn't sure if I wanted to outline those red little tissue paper parts, but I did anyway. I tried to, as I was thinking and making decisions, I was trying to also be doing something. So to kind of think through my brush, if that makes any sense. I wanted it to be very organic and natural. I did not want it to feel forced or to try to resemble anything, because it definitely does not. And if you think about where I started from that grid journal page with those tiny little 18 squares, they were mostly green. They were not nearly as detailed as this because they were very small, and that was a totally different exercise. But it's the greens together that made me so happy. And it feels so fresh and lush and springy. And, you know, it's February in Chicago and it is gloomy. So this is potentially just my escape to, hey, what's going to come in March and April and May? Let me get some green here. Let's remember that things are going to come back to life. I don't remember what I just used there to kind of carve into that Celadon. I can't remember if it's pencil or if I tried to carve into it. Now I'm bringing in some quinacridone gold just to warm things up a bit. Right? This is kind of the opposite of green. And you can see as I'm glazing, I'm wiping it on and then wiping a lot of it off. Just adds a little more dimension, having more warm colors in there. It's not as bright and loud as the red, so it doesn't pull a lot of focus, it just rounds things out a bit. I'm so excited that I finally get to show you today what the 7 panels looked like when I gave it to my husband. And there's one that I did not give to him. I did hold one of them back, and it's the bottom left-hand one that I held back. And you'll see I didn't tape everything from the transition from this point to the finished product, but the first one that you'll see pop up here in a minute is the one I did not include in the series. I could have kept working on it, and I may keep working on it, but I wasn't going to have a series of 7, and it didn't, I liked the other ones so much more that I just stuck with the other ones. But I'll still show you. You've been so patient to watch all these videos. Of course I'll show you. This is me making a further mess out of that one. And I'm adding some color just to get things to a different saturation point. A bit more green. Thank you so much for watching this. I'm going to be showing you the finished products very soon. There will be some jumps, and some of these have made a lot of progress. This is the one I did not choose. There are things I like about it, but it's very centered to me. And I had so much fun making these. Thank you for watching. Thank you for inquiring about them. If you'd like to see more of my videos, please subscribe. I would love to have you watching more often. I post new videos every Sunday. Have a wonderful day. And this one's my favorite.